we don't, in many respects, need to deal with it. Not least of all because it is the monarch that is the key to this.
The royal palace has been through a lot of scandals before, but nothing shocked the public like this. Queen Camilla, who has always been a controversial figure, has now been kicked out of the royal family, and the person who exposed her was Princess Anne. Anne is known for being honest and loyal to royal traditions, and this time, she revealed something so serious that the royal family had no choice but to act. So, what did Anne reveal? And could this really be the end of Camilla's time in the royal family? Join us as we uncover what Anne exposed about Camilla, the rise of Camilla, and the growing tensions. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away in September 2022, the United Kingdom entered a historic new chapter. King Charles III ascended the throne, and by his side stood a woman whose royal journey had been anything but conventional, Camilla, now formally known as Queen Consort. Her new title had been publicly endorsed by the late Queen earlier that same year, when Queen Elizabeth released a carefully worded statement expressing her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. It was a decision that carried weight and one that many interpreted as an effort to ensure continuity, stability, and a smooth transition. But even with that royal blessing, Camilla's rise remained controversial in the eyes of many. Within royal circles and among the British public, the feelings surrounding her new position were deeply divided. Her complicated past, particularly the well-documented affair with Charles during his marriage to Princess Diana, still lingered in the public memory. There was admiration from some for her perseverance and dignity, but there was also lingering resentment, an emotional undercurrent that continued to shape how she was received. Yet behind the palace walls, something more serious had begun to take root. Keep watching to find out. Before the Queen passed, the royal family had taken every measure to ensure stability during a time of immense change. The monarch had ruled for over 70 years, and her departure marked more than the loss of a sovereign. It signaled the end of an era. That's why Queen Elizabeth's public endorsement of Camilla wasn't just a gesture of approval. It was a calculated move. It was about protecting the crown's structure and avoiding public confusion. Camilla, who had long existed in a gray area between royal formality and public suspicion, was suddenly pushed into the spotlight as the monarchy's second most visible face. Camilla's transition from Duchess of Cornwall to Queen Consort was, on the surface, seamless. She attended state functions, accompanied the new king to high-profile events, and began taking on responsibilities that had once belonged to the queen herself. But behind this carefully choreographed image of unity, the dynamics within the family began to change. The palace, an institution known for its control, could not entirely mask the friction growing just beneath the surface. Camilla, once seen as a supporting figure in Charles's life, began to hold more influence than many had anticipated. Some even said she wielded more soft power than any royal consort in modern memory. She was not just standing beside the king. She was advising, shaping appearances, and quietly commanding spaces where she was once only a guest. It wasn't long before her growing presence became the subject of quiet conversations within the palace, among biographers, and behind closed doors in royal-adjacent circles. And not everyone welcomed this evolution. Princess Anne, Charles's younger sister, had always held a distinct place in the monarchy. Known for her blunt nature, her deep loyalty to duty, and her disinterest in drama, Anne had never sought public affection the way others had. Her reputation rested on discipline, hard work, and a clear sense of what royalty was supposed to represent. And over the years, Anne had maintained a cool, sometimes distant, relationship with Camilla. Biographers often noted that she was skeptical of Camilla's integration into royal life. Though no major confrontations were ever confirmed, the tension was well known to those familiar with the inner workings of the royal household. And now, with Camilla's role expanding, Anne's silence began to change. Camilla's increasing visibility and the influence that came with it sparked both admiration and unease. Supporters praised her for stepping into the vacuum, left by Queen Elizabeth, for showing up, for softening Charles's public image, and for taking on charitable work. But to others, her rise felt abrupt, perhaps even opportunistic. Some feared that she was beginning to overshadow other long-established royals. Most of all, there were growing concerns that her influence was beginning to shape not only the king's decisions, but the monarchy's direction. These concerns were not confined to whispers. As her power expanded, so did the scrutiny. Camilla's past, which had never been fully forgiven or forgotten by segments of the public, returned to the forefront. Her long relationship with Charles had always been framed as controversial. For decades, she was seen by many as the other woman, and while time had softened the narrative, it had not erased it. The media reminded the public of her past at every opportunity, and critics wondered if she was truly the right person to carry forward the legacy of the crown. Still, the palace remained firm. Camilla retained her title, her duties, and her place at the king's side. There was no public suggestion that her position was under review or anything, until, suddenly, everything changed. According to sources close to the family, the breaking point came not through leaked documents or secret meetings, but through a rare moment of public candor. Princess Anne, long known for her discretion, reportedly made a blunt and pointed statement during a private conversation that found its way to the press. Though the full details were never officially confirmed, what emerged was clear. Anne questioned whether Camilla had overstepped her role. This revelation shocked the palace. In a monarchy where unity is prized above all, where private tensions are kept tightly sealed, this kind of public crack was unprecedented. The response was swift, and in a shocking and decisive move, the palace announced that Camilla would be stripped of the title Queen Consort. The change was sudden and unexplained. There was no press conference, no detailed reasoning, only a brief announcement that sent shockwaves through the British press. The decision didn't just alter Camilla's place in the monarchy, it reignited every debate surrounding her past. Critics resurfaced old arguments about her role in the collapse of Charles's first marriage. Biographers revisited the timeline of her rise, and in the midst of all the noise, the royal family itself appeared stunned. There were no smiles during public engagements, no affectionate glances, and no carefully staged family moments. The institution had been rattled, and it showed. Furthermore, Camilla's rise had seemed at one point inevitable, but her fall, swift and unsparing, reminded the public that nothing in the monarchy is truly guaranteed. Titles can be given, and they can be taken. Influence can grow, and then vanish overnight. The royal family, no matter how composed it appears, is still made up of human beings, bound by tradition, yes, but also driven by emotion, fear, pride, and power. And so, while Camilla's future now hung in uncertainty, one thing was clear: the monarchy had been changed. Whether it could endure the ripple effects of this decision remained to be seen. But before we understand what lies ahead, we must go back, because to fully grasp the weight of Camilla's rise and fall, we have to understand where she came from and how the early years, the private controversies, and the secret tensions laid the groundwork for the turmoil that would eventually bring her world crashing down. Stay tuned as we delve into this. Camilla's controversial entry into the royal family. Long before her marriage to Charles, Camilla's name already carried the weight of whispers, headlines, and hidden tension. She didn't step into the royal spotlight quietly. Instead, her journey was shaped by tradition pushing against personal choice. And even before she ever wore a royal title, Camilla was already a central figure in one of the most complicated stories the monarchy had ever seen. Camilla's connection with Charles began quietly in the early 1970s. They met at a polo match in Windsor, and from the start there was a natural chemistry, but the timing and royal duty was never on their side. Charles was expected to find a bride with no past scandals, someone who could represent the crown without causing waves. Camilla, though well-bred and part of the aristocracy, didn't meet those impossible standards. She had already been romantically linked with others and, in the eyes of the royal advisors, was not considered a suitable match. So, even though they grew close, their relationship remained under wraps and eventually drifted apart when Charles left for naval duties. During his absence, Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles, which seemed to end any chance of a royal future. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a longer, messier story. When Charles married Lady Diana Spencer in 1981, it was seen as the perfect royal union. Diana was young, beautiful, and beloved by the public. But behind palace walls, Charles's heart was still elsewhere. The relationship between Charles and Diana was rocky from the start, and as the marriage began to crumble, Camilla's name resurfaced. Diana's 1995 BBC interview shook the world. Her words, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," left no doubt about who she was referring to. That single sentence defined Camilla in the eyes of the public as the other woman who had intruded on a fairy tale marriage. The backlash was swift and brutal. Camilla became a symbol of betrayal. Tabloids painted her as the villain, and crowds booed her in public. She kept a low profile, avoiding the spotlight, yet the anger never truly faded. Every move she made was scrutinized, and her name was often dragged through stories that seemed more fiction than fact. The royal family, especially the Queen, didn't make things easier. For years, Queen Elizabeth refused to acknowledge Camilla's presence. She wasn't invited to family events, and Charles was warned to keep his relationship private. The Queen, a staunch defender of royal tradition, could not reconcile Camilla's controversial image with the dignity of the monarchy. This left Charles torn, with his loyalty to his mother pulling one way, and his commitment to Camilla pulling the other. Charles's aides tried to manage the situation quietly, and one of the key figures in this behind-the-scenes drama was Sir Michael Peat, his private secretary. At first, Peat's strategy was to create distance. He believed Camilla's presence was hurting Charles's image and distracting from his royal duties. So for a time, he kept her in the background. But eventually, it became clear that the relationship wasn't going away. So Peat switched strategies. He began to work on reshaping Camilla's public image, not with big announcements, but with small, deliberate steps. Slowly, Camilla was reintroduced to the public. She started appearing at events, though rarely, beside Charles at first. Over time, she became more visible, and the palace began releasing carefully crafted messages to soften her image. Her involvement in charity work played a big role in this shift. Camilla wasn't flashy or attention-seeking, but she was consistent. She focused on causes like osteoporosis and salt awareness. These were issues that didn't draw headlines but mattered deeply to her. These efforts also helped change how people saw her. She wasn't trying to be Diana. She wasn't competing for the spotlight. Instead, she was carving her own quiet path. Still, the Queen remained distant. It took years before she began to soften her stance. One turning point was the public's slow acceptance. Another was Prince William and Prince Harry gradually building a civil relationship with Camilla, which signaled a change in tone from the younger generation. However, when Charles proposed in 2005, the engagement wasn't just a personal milestone. It was a carefully planned move by the royal household. The ring he gave her had once belonged to the Queen Mother, a subtle but powerful symbol. And by giving that ring to Camilla, Charles was sending a message. He was saying that Camilla was part of the family, and this time, it was official. When reporters pressed Camilla for details about the proposal, she chose to stay quiet. Instead of talking about romantic gestures, she let the ring speak for itself. It was a symbol of all she had endured and the acceptance she had fought so long to gain. Their wedding day, on April 9, 2005, wasn't a grand spectacle. There were no extravagant parades or over-the-top celebrations. Instead, it was a quiet, civil ceremony followed by a blessing at St. George's Chapel. It was clear from the start that this wedding wasn't about a fairy tale or a grand romantic celebration. Instead, it felt more like a quiet recognition of a relationship that had survived years of judgment, public scrutiny, and endless controversy. Camilla looked nervous that day, and it made sense. She wasn't just marrying Charles. She was stepping into a role that had been out of reach for most of her life. She was joining a family that had once treated her as an outsider. a problem they didn't want to deal with, and was even a threat to the image of the monarchy. So, when she wore the Queen Mother's ring, it meant far more than just love. It was a statement. It showed that after all those years, Camilla had finally been accepted into the royal family. This ring wasn't just jewelry. It represented her long and difficult journey. She had gone from being the other woman to becoming Charles's wife and eventually Queen Consort. And this ring marked that transformation. It stood for legitimacy, for belonging, and for everything she had endured to get there. It also showed just how determined Charles had been to keep her by his side through it all. However, what makes things even more complicated is Princess Anne's involvement in this. She's always been known for having firm beliefs and for being deeply committed to the traditions of the monarchy. While she respects her brother's decision, her loyalty has often been more to the crown and what it represents, rather than to the people wearing it. And now, with Anne revealing something that seems to have triggered this moment, it's clear that there are bigger issues within the royal family, problems that may have been quietly brewing for years. A lot of people believe that Anne never truly accepted Camilla. To her, Camilla may have always been someone who disrupted an already fragile situation. Being a traditionalist, Anne probably felt that Camilla stepping into the role of Queen Consort went against everything the monarchy stood for. After all, Diana wasn't just loved by the public. Many in the royal family cared for her deeply too. So for Anne, Camilla might always be a reminder of the pain, the scandal, and everything that went wrong in Charles and Diana's marriage. But here's the most interesting part: Camilla's struggles for acceptance. Anne wasn't the only one who seemed cold toward Camilla. After Camilla officially became Queen Consort, her past didn't just quietly fade into the background. Instead, it got even more attention, especially since she stepped into a role that many once pictured for the late Princess Diana. Even though the palace tried to show her as a loyal and supportive wife to King Charles, the public wasn't fully convinced. This made some royal family members even more distant. For a lot of people, Camilla will always be seen as the other woman, the person who caused problems in Charles and Diana's marriage. And even though she and Charles didn't get married until 2005, which was years after Diana's tragic death, many people still couldn't forget the scandal that had followed them for so long. Over time, the palace worked hard to improve Camilla's image. They pushed stories that showed her as a devoted partner who had been by Charles's side through all the ups and downs. But no matter how carefully her image was polished, it always felt like her path to becoming Queen Consort was built on someone else's heartbreak. So, when she finally got the title of Queen Consort, it didn't feel like a fresh start to everyone. To some, it felt like the past was being rewritten, and the pain Diana went through was being brushed aside. Things got even more tense when Prince Harry released his memoir, Spare, in 2023. In the book, Harry didn't hold back. He openly called out Camilla and accused her of using the media to clean up her reputation. He stated that she had thrown people under the bus, including him and his brother William, just to make herself look good. According to him, Camilla had built a close bond with the press and used it to control the public story about her. And while these rumors had been whispered about for years, hearing it directly from Diana's son made it hit much harder. Many people who already felt uneasy about Camilla now saw her as someone who was calculating and manipulative. Some believed Harry was just speaking from the fact that he was hurt, but others thought he was brave enough to finally tell the truth. However, the palace didn't comment, but behind closed doors, it was said that Charles was devastated by what Harry had written. He had already been trying to fix his broken relationship with his son, and this public attack on Camilla only made things worse. Camilla, on the other hand, kept quiet. People close to her said she was deeply hurt and angry and felt like Harry had crossed a line that couldn't be erased. Still, she stayed composed and didn't let the criticism show. But even if she looked calm on the outside, the tension within the family was obvious. The gap between Harry and the rest of the royals only seemed to grow, with a little hope that things would get better anytime soon. It also became clear that Camilla's new role didn't just affect her, it affected everyone around her. And things really came to a head during the coronation of King Charles and Queen Camilla in May 2023. The event was supposed to bring the royal family together and mark a fresh chapter, but instead, it put their divisions on display. Prince Harry showed up, but he didn't stay long, and Meghan stayed in California. The fact that Harry left so quickly after the ceremony felt like a quiet protest against Camilla's place in the royal family. To make things more awkward, reports came out that Camilla wanted her own family to play a big part in the coronation. Her grandchildren were even given special roles, and that raised a lot of eyebrows. It looked like she was putting her own family ahead of the senior royals, which didn't sit well with Prince William and Catherine. People started accusing Camilla of trying to change how the monarchy worked, with her decision of mixing personal choices with royal duties in a way that seems selfish. But what really shocked everyone was what the palace did next. For years, it had been promised that Camilla would be called Queen Consort when Charles became king. This was meant to honor the complicated past and not overshadow Diana. But right before the coronation, the palace dropped consort and officially started calling her Queen Camilla. For Diana's supporters, and especially for Anne, it felt like a betrayal. It was like the royal family was pretending none of that past pain ever happened. To some people, this title change showed that Camilla had completely flipped the narrative. She had gone from being the woman on the outside to the Queen of the United Kingdom. But for Harry, it seemed like proof that Camilla had played her cards right and climbed her way into power by rewriting the story in her favor. Prince William accepted the change, mostly because of his duty, but it only made things harder between Harry and the rest of the family. At the same time, Camilla started making some big changes inside Buckingham Palace. Reports said she led a shakeup of the staff, replacing several of Queen Elizabeth II's most trusted aides. One of the biggest names to go was Angela Kelly, the Queen's longtime dresser and close friend. Angela had always been known for fiercely protecting the Queen's legacy, and when she was quietly moved out of her home on the Windsor estate, it felt to many like Camilla was making room for her own circle. Critics claimed she was building her own base of loyal people to strengthen her position in the palace. But everything changed again in early 2024 when the palace revealed that King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer. The news took everyone by surprise and shifted the attention away from drama and toward real concern about what would happen next. As Charles began treatment, Camilla stepped up and took on more of his public duties. Some saw this as her chance to show she could handle the pressure of being queen. Others, however, started worrying that if Charles's health got worse, Camilla's influence might grow even more, which made some people uneasy. Now, with Princess Anne finally speaking out about Camilla's actions, it seems like there are still serious problems within the royal family. Anne's comments made it clear that there are old wounds that never fully healed. The public has always been shown a picture of a united family, but behind the scenes, there might be long-standing grudges and emotional divides. This leaves many wondering if all of this is just about personal feelings, or if it's also about protecting the future of the monarchy. And depending on how Charles responds to Anne's words, it could reveal deeper cracks in his marriage or show that some family members still don't accept Camilla. So do you think Camilla will keep her crown? Or is it starting to slip? And can King Charles keep his family together? Or is the damage already done? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.